Startups are constantly emerging with innovative ideas, but the question remains, are they solving real problems or just chasing trends? In my conversation with Itowo Dofia, a product designer at My Edited, we look at how startups can identify and address real-world challenges and the importance of cultural context in product design. Itowo, startups are often described as solving problems, but let's start with a foundational question. How would you define a real-world problem, and why would you say it's important for startups to focus on addressing these rather than just, creating trendy products?
Yeah, well, okay, so let's get the definition of real world problem. What is a real world problem? A real world problem is essentially a tangible issue that significantly impacts individuals, communities, industries, and they're called problems because they lack adequate solution, right? A real world problem is essentially a problem that the everyday man faces, right? And it is often a subset of what we call a wicked problem. So, a wicked problem is a complex social and cultural issue that is very difficult to solve. So, for example, climate change, right? That is a wicked problem. It's vast, right? And so, from that wicked problem, you can break it down into smaller bits to real world problems, and then startups you try to solve these problems, right? It is very important for them to solve real world problems because one, that's the only way your startup is sustainable, right? If you follow the trend, trends come and go, so your startup will ultimately come and go with the trend. Also, impact, that is the only way. When you're solving a real problem, that is the only way your startup will have a real impact on the lives of individuals and communities and the world at large. And then market validation. If you're not solving a real world problem, the chances that people would use your product is very slim.
So one agreeable reason startups fail is because they build something that people don't want instead of building something that's like 10 times better than the alternative they're trying to switch them from. So in the course of trying to solve real-world problems, what steps can founders take to identify gaps in the market or real issues people face daily so they can actually provide adequate solutions to them?
But I think the most important way or the fastest way for any founder to identify gaps in the market or identify real world issues is based on personal experience. A few days ago, I bought prepaid light, so I paid for it on my app, and they sent me the code, and then I tried to load up the code, and it didn't work. It just showed error, error, and I was frustrated. I was like, just like how I would buy a recharge card on um, my phone, on my app, on my banking app, right? And I'm immediately credited. Why is this electricity not just credited into my prepaid account? Why do I have to get a code and try to, there's that blocker, and that's something that is a problem that I'm facing. So that is a personal experience for me. So I can decide to take that up and say, I need to build something that would mitigate that issue, right? Again, personal experience, right? Now, it's one thing for you to have a problem, right, and solve your problem, but you we need to make sure that that problem, um, not just you, but many other people are going through that problem, and that's where you come in. That's where research comes in. You have to always research, right? Speak to people and say, oh, do you also have this problem, or do you have something similar to this problem? And with that, you can now bring all your research and insights together to formulate your idea and the basis for what you're doing.
Let's talk about building scalable solutions because that's also important, right? Most investors want scalable ideas, and I'm sure you can attest to that. There's often a gap between the grand vision of a startup and the investor's focus on returns. So, how do founders bridge that gap?
That same relationship needs to exist between investors and founders. So you don't just go and collect anybody's money. It's like, okay, um, uh, is this investor good for my business, right? Is this investor just focused on return, or is he focused on what we are trying to solve? Does this investor believe in the vision? And vice versa, as an investor, you're looking at this founder. Is this a founder that is ready to commit long term, right? So I met these two founders in the UK earlier this year, and they said they met some investors who gave them money, basically gave them a blank check, say, whenever you need money, we're going to give you money, right? But then the investors would say, I need you to build XYZ. They would do that, and the investors would come again and say, oh no, change this, change that. And they realized that they were not really founders, they were just figureheads in the company. It was the investors that were doing most of the decisions and building. And so they left. They went on to start their own company. And today, the company is, I think, 12, 13 years old, and they've never raised funds. They've never had investors. They are fully self-funded just because of that experience. And so that shows you that there has to be that symbiotic relationship between investors and founders. There has to be that alignment, else then there's no point.
Using that experience you've just highlighted, is it possible for startup founders to align providing solutions to problems with building scalable solutions that the investors want?
Yes, it is. It is very possible. It is very possible. So it is not the investors that so I'm trying to be careful how I say this, right? So the vision of a company is really the founders, is really for the founders. The investors, yes, believe in the dream and provide money, but investors naturally, I would not want. I think the ideal situation is not for an investor to dictate how the company goes, like the vision of the company, right? They are more advisors, right? So yes, it is possible. I mean, we have many companies in today who have great relationship with their investors. We have great investors who believe in founders, and they're doing really, really good.
So I see you've tried your best to break things down for our audience, but let's focus on you now. You've been described as a product designer making global impact in the tech industry, especially when it comes to product design, right? And I can say that that has probably given you a unique perspective on diverse markets like Nigeria. So tell me, how important is cultural context in designing solutions that resonate with the public?
Right. I have worked with several. I've worked with several organizations across the world, and at every point in time, there has been a shift in how I design. Right. So very early on in my career, I worked for a company in India, and I realized that the Indians, they like their design very compact. Right. So they would naturally fit a lot of things into one screen. Right. And it's very different from how the Americans do it. It's very different from how um, the people in the British, how they design, right? And it's not to say it's a bad thing. It is just their culture. So if you were to work for an Indian company, you would have, or design for an Indian company, you know that, okay, if this is the demographic of people, right? And so I would want to make my design compact. When I worked for a company in Germany, I would initially design in English and then translate my design to German. But the German text is longer than the English text. So it made my design a bit distorted, right? And so I had to learn to design right off the bat in German so that I can take into cognizance that the long string of the German language. And in the UK, where I currently work for a company in the UK, they're very accessibility focused. And so, they almost prioritize, I will say they more often than not prioritize accessibility over UI. And then in Nigeria here, what I find is in Nigeria, we're really all about the UI, having beautiful UI overall. And then we just chip in a bit of UX here. Now, it is not to say any of this, how this design is done in any of these places is wrong. It is just the culture of that place. And so as a designer who wants to stay competitive in the global markets, right, you essentially have to be able to put yourself into this cultural context and deliver your best work.
Staying with you, Ito, but looking at things from a human-centered AI design perspective, AI is the buzzword now, and for someone that works with a platform that's AI powered, I'm sure you can relate to that. And also the fact that AI can sometimes feel like a black box to users. So tell me, how do you approach designing products that make AI interactions, more transparent, accessible, and aligned with the needs of your diverse users? How do you take all of those elements into consideration so, people are not left out?
Well, it's not very different, right, from designing regularly the way I would design normally, right? And I would say AI is just a tool, right? I don't believe AI will steal anyone's job. I think AI is meant to enhance people's work, right? So say help them iterate faster, right? And so uh, let me take this back to the fundamentals, right? When designing any product, right, you have to stick to the fundamentals, and AI would only is only meant to help you uh, achieve this faster. Present AI processes in a decision in a very simple way, right? Ensure that your interface caters to users' needs, and then make sure that users are in control.
Well, Ito, one thing I'm taking from what you said is that, AI might not take people's jobs. And I, agree with that because one thing a couple of, tech experts agree on is that we shouldn't be scared of AI taking over our jobs. But the fact that someone who knows how to use AI tools better than us just might be the one to take over our jobs. And I think that just means that we all need to skill up. It was such an enlightening interview with you, Ito Udofia, product designer at My Edited. Thank you so much for joining us on Tech Trends.
Thank you so much for having me.